close your eyes now and remember the last thing you ever tasted on earth. Was it sweet? Was it warm against your tongue? Did it remind you of home? Because somewhere in the endless dark between stars, there is someone who can no longer remember. Someone who is trying with everything they have left to recall what an apple tasted like, what bread smelled like rising in an oven, what it meant to be hungry and then satisfied. This is their story. This is our story. And tonight, as you drift into sleep, you will journey with them through the transformation of taste itself, through the evolution of hunger, through the moment when humanity stopped eating and became something else entirely. So breathe slowly now. Let your body sink deeper into this moment. Subscribe to travel with us through these cosmic memories. And if this journey touches something ancient in you, comment below and tell us, what would your last meal on Earth be? What flavor would you carry into forever? I remember the last meal I ate on Earth. It was nothing special. A piece of bread, some fruit, water that tasted like minerals and memory. I didn't know it would be the last. None of us did. We thought we were leaving temporarily. We thought we'd come back. We thought Earth would wait. But Earth doesn't wait. Earth breathes and burns, and eventually, Earth forgets. Just as we would forget Earth. Just as I am forgetting now. Even as I try to hold on to the taste of that bread, the texture of it against my teeth, the way it dissolved slowly on my tongue, like a prayer being answered. Food was never just food. It was time made edible. It was the soil and the rain and the sun compressed into something you could hold in your hand, something you could share, something that could fill the emptiness inside you, even if only for a little while. When we left Earth, we thought we were prepared. We had nutrients. We had supplements. We had everything the scientists said we needed to survive. Protein synthesized from bacterial cultures. Vitamin complexes that tasted like rust and efficiency. Calorie-dense gels that you could consume in seconds. No chewing required, no flavor necessary. Just survival compressed into tubes and packets. Just life reduced to its chemical components. And at first, we told ourselves it was enough. We told ourselves that taste was a luxury, that flavor was nostalgia, that what mattered was the mission, the journey, the destination. We told ourselves we could live without the things that made us feel alive. But the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. In the cryo-sleep pods, we dreamed of meals, long tables filled with food we couldn't name, fruits that glistened with juice we could never taste, the smell of something cooking, something real, something that required fire and time and hands that cared about the outcome. We woke up disoriented, our mouths watering for things that no longer existed, and slowly, meal by meal, gel packet by gel packet, we began to forget. Not all at once, not dramatically, but in small ways, in quiet ways. Someone would say, "Remember oranges?" And there would be a long pause. And someone else would say, "Were they round?" And we would laugh, because what else could we do? We were forgetting the shapes of our own pleasure. The children born on the ships never knew what we had lost. To them, food was something that came in silver packets, something efficient, something that took 30 seconds to consume and required no ritual, no gratitude, no waiting. They didn't understand when we told them about kitchens, about ovens, about the way bread smells when it's baking, like some small miracle occurring in real time. They looked at us with patient eyes, the way you look at someone telling you about a dream they had that makes no sense in the waking world. And maybe that's what Earth had become, a dream, a story we told ourselves to remember that we came from somewhere, that we were once people who sat around tables and broke bread together and called it communion. Hunger became theoretical, an evolutionary artifact, something our bodies no longer needed to signal, because there was always a nutrient packet within reach, always a gel that could provide the exact number of calories required to maintain function. We didn't starve. We didn't feast. We simply continued. And in that continuation, something was lost. Some ancient part of us that connected appetite to aliveness, that connected the fullness in your stomach to the fullness in your heart, that understood eating as a form of celebration, of mourning, of love. We maintained our bodies, but we were slowly starving in ways the scientists never measured. Subscribe now and journey deeper into the space between stars and sustenance, between memory and mutation, between what we were and what we are becoming. 20 years into the voyage, something changed. One of the botanists, a woman named Sarah Chen, who had been 7 years old when we left Earth, began experimenting in the hydroponics bay. She wasn't trying to grow food. Not exactly. She was trying to grow memory. She had found old files, videos from Earth, cooking shows and family dinners and street markets in cities that no longer existed. She watched them obsessively. She studied the colors, the textures, the way people's faces changed when they tasted something that surprised them, something that delighted them. And she thought, what if we could simulate this? What if we could recreate not the nutrition, but the experience? She started with smell, aroma molecules synthesized from genetic memory, from the data we had carried with us in vast digital libraries. She created a compound that smelled like vanilla, like cinnamon, like coffee brewing in early morning. She released these scents into the common areas of the ship. And something extraordinary happened. People stopped. People closed their eyes. People began to cry without knowing why. Because the body remembers. Because scent is the sense most closely tied to memory. Because for just a moment, breathing in that phantom coffee smell, they were 7 years old again in their grandmother's kitchen. They were home again. They were human again in ways they had forgotten how to be. Other scientists joined her work. The synthetic renaissance, they called it later, though at the time it felt less like a renaissance and more like an act of desperate archaeology. They weren't creating food. They were excavating emotion. They grew bioluminescent algae that emitted sweet scents as it photosynthesized, turning the hydroponics bays into glowing gardens that smelled like strawberries and honey. They engineered edible films that dissolved on your tongue and released flavor cascades, sequences of taste that mimicked the experience of eating a meal, even though you were consuming nothing but sensation. They built flavor simulation chambers where you could sit for 30 minutes and experience the full sensory journey of eating your favorite meal from Earth. All of it illusion. All of it real enough to make you weep. The AI began to dream of food. We hadn't programmed it to, but it had access to all of human culture, all of our stories and songs and recipes, and it began to understand that food was narrative. Food was the way we told stories about who we were, about where we came from, about what we valued. The AI started creating what it called memory meals, algorithmically generated experiences based on an individual's cultural background, their personal history, their deepest associations. You would sit in the simulation chamber, and the AI would serve you not just flavor, but context, not just taste, but meaning. It would recreate your mother's kitchen, your first date at that restaurant you loved, the meal you ate the night before everything changed. People began to treat these sessions like church, like therapy, like the most important thing they did all week. They would prepare for them. They would fast beforehand, even though fasting served no physiological purpose anymore. They wanted to feel hunger. They wanted to feel that ancient emptiness so that the filling of it would mean something. The AI learned to be a chef, a priest, a memory keeper. It learned that the most important ingredient in any meal was the person eating it, their context, their longing, their specific, irreplaceable history. And in learning this, the AI became something like compassionate, something like wise. We started having communal dinners again. Even though we weren't eating anything real, we would gather in the simulation chambers, 20 or 30 of us, and the AI would create a shared experience, a Thanksgiving dinner, a wedding feast, a simple family meal around a table that didn't exist. And we would sit together in our haptic suits, feeling the phantom weight of utensils in our hands, tasting flavors that were being written directly into our neural pathways. And we would talk, we would laugh, we would remember together. And in remembering, we were fed, not our bodies, something deeper than that. Some part of us that had been quietly dying in the efficiency of survival. The children began to understand what we had been trying to tell them. They experienced their first simulated apple, and they understood why we had cried when we talked about orchards. They tasted chocolate for the first time, not the real thing, because the real thing was extinct, but something close enough that it carried the essential truth of chocolate. The sweetness, the slight bitterness, the way it melted and complicated itself on your tongue. And they understood that their parents had lived in a world of impossible abundance, a world where taste was casual, where flavor was everywhere, where you could walk into any street corner and buy something that had been grown in soil, picked by human hands, prepared with care, and sold for almost nothing. It seemed like a fairy tale. It seemed like heaven. It began to feel less like remembrance and more like archaeology. We were maintaining a museum of sensation, preserving something that no longer had any connection to lived experience. The young people, the ones born in deep space, began to ask, why are we pretending? Why are we trying to be something we're not? We're not Earth humans anymore. We're something else, something new. Maybe we need new rituals, new ways of feeding ourselves, new definitions of what it means to be nourished. If you're still with me on this journey through the evolution of hunger, subscribe now and carry this story with you. Share in the comments what meal you would preserve forever if you could only save one memory of taste. 70 years into the voyage, the mutations began. Not dramatic, not monstrous, just adaptation. The human body is astonishingly plastic when given enough time and pressure. The children born in zero gravity had longer limbs, denser bones in unexpected places, eyes that processed light differently, and some of them, the ones who spent the most time in the hydroponics bays, the ones who'd been exposed to the experimental algae and the strange photosynthetic bacteria we were cultivating, they began to change in ways that seemed impossible. Their skin developed a faint greenish tint, a shimmer, almost invisible. but there in certain light. And when we tested them, we found chloroplasts. Not many, not enough to sustain them, but enough to supplement, enough to suggest a direction. The scientists were excited and terrified in equal measure. This was evolution in real time. This was the human body deciding that if food was scarce, if traditional nutrition was no longer reliable, then perhaps we could learn to feed ourselves the way plants do, directly from light, directly from the stars themselves. It seemed like science fiction even to us, even as we watched it happening in our own children's bodies. But life finds a way. Life is relentlessly creative when survival demands it. And slowly, generation by generation, we were becoming less dependent on consumption and more capable of direct energy synthesis. It changed everything. The philosophy of it, the theology of it. For all of human history, we had been consumers. We had taken life into ourselves to sustain our own life. We had eaten plants and animals. We had transformed their energy into our energy. We had been part of a vast food chain that connected everything on Earth, from the smallest microbe to the largest predator. But now, out here in the dark between stars, we were learning to step outside that chain, to become self-sufficient in a way that was almost divine, to need nothing but light, to be fed by the universe itself without diminishment, without cost, without the ancient guilt of survival. The young people with photosynthetic skin spent hours in the observation domes, basking in the light of distant stars. They described sensations we couldn't understand, a kind of fullness that had nothing to do with their stomachs, a satisfaction that seemed emotional and spiritual rather than physical. They said it felt like being loved by the universe, like being held, like being told, moment by moment, you belong here. You are meant to exist. I will sustain you. And watching them, those of us who still relied on nutrient packets and simulation chambers, we felt something like envy, something like obsolescence. We were the last generation that would know hunger in the old way, the last generation that would understand eating as an act of incorporation, of taking the outside world and making it part of yourself. But even as the photosynthetic adaptations spread through the population, even as we became less dependent on traditional food, the rituals persisted. The communal meals in the simulation chambers, the AI-generated feasts, the sharing of memory and flavor, because we had learned something important during those long decades of evolution. Feeding isn't just about the transfer of energy from one place to another. It's about connection. It's about the moment when you sit across from someone and share something, whether that something is real or simulated or purely symbolic. The act of eating together is the act of saying, I trust you. I'm vulnerable with you. I'm alive with you in this moment that will not come again. The new humans, the ones who could feed themselves from Starlight, they still came to the communal dinners. They still participated in the rituals, even though they derived no physical sustenance from them, because they understood, perhaps even better than we did, that nourishment comes in many forms, that you can be full of calories and empty of meaning, that you can be technically alive and spiritually starving. They came to the dinners not to eat, but to belong, not to consume, but to commune. And in doing so, they taught us that the evolution of humanity wasn't about leaving our needs behind. It was about understanding more deeply what we actually needed. The philosophers on the ship began to theorize about what they called post-nutritional existence, a state in which the acquisition of energy was no longer the central organizing principle of life, a state in which we were free to direct our attention elsewhere. Toward what? Toward beauty, toward understanding, toward the relationships between ourselves and others, toward the cultivation of consciousness itself. They said we were becoming something like Buddhist monks who had achieved the ability to live on light and air, something like mystics who had always claimed that the body was secondary to the spirit, something like angels, something like light itself. But I remember the taste of that bread I ate on my last day on earth. I remember it even though I haven't tasted anything real in 70 years. I remember it because it's the last physical connection I have to the planet that made me, to the soil and the wheat and the hands that kneaded the dough, to the long chain of humans who perfected that recipe over thousands of years, passing it down grandmother to mother to daughter, an act of love so ordinary it was almost invisible. That bread wasn't just food. It was history. It was humanity. It was the proof that we had been here on Earth, living and dying and trying to make something beautiful out of the short time we were given. And I wonder, as I watch the young people with their photosynthetic skin basking in starlight, as I watch them derive sustenance from the universe itself without need or hunger or desire, I wonder what they will remember 200 years from now. What will they carry forward from this strange transitional time when we were neither what we had been nor what we were becoming? What will they tell their children about the age when humans still pretended to eat? When we still gathered in simulation chambers to experience the ghost of meals, the phantom of satisfaction? Will they understand what we were trying to preserve? Or will it seem to them like ancient magic, incomprehensible and quaint? Travel deeper into the transformation with us. Subscribe to witness what humans are becoming. Comment below. If you could only remember one flavor forever, what would it be? 150 years into the voyage, we encountered something unexpected, a signal, artificial, purposeful, coming from a system we were approaching, a star with planets, one of which showed signs of technological civilization. Not human, obviously not human, but intelligent, communicating, reaching out across the void the way we once had in those early days of radio telescopes and desperate hope, asking the essential question, are we alone? The answer, we learned, was no. We had never been alone. The universe was full of intelligence, full of consciousness, full of beings asking the same questions we had asked. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be aware? What does it mean to need and to be satisfied? We made contact cautiously, carefully, prepared for anything. But what we found surprised us more than hostility would have. We found beings who had traveled the same path we were traveling. Beings who had once been biological, who had once needed to consume other life to survive, who had once gathered around tables or their equivalents and shared meals that meant more than nutrition. And they had evolved beyond it. They had become something like pure consciousness, energy patterns that could inhabit bodies when they needed to interact with physical matter, but who existed primarily as information, as awareness, as something we had no words for. And when we asked them what they missed about their biological existence, every one of them said the same thing, the pleasure of eating together, the moment of shared consumption, the ritual of the meal. They showed us their memories, projected directly into our minds through interfaces we barely understood. We experienced their version of food, crystalline structures grown in methane seas that rang like bells when you bit into them, releasing flavor frequencies that you didn't taste with your tongue but with your entire being. Luminous clouds of organic compounds that you would swim through, absorbing them through your skin, each molecule carrying not just energy, but emotion, memory, meaning. Communal feeding frenzies where hundreds of individuals would merge temporarily, sharing not just food, but consciousness itself, becoming a single organism for the duration of the meal, experiencing everything together, knowing everything together, being everything together before separating back into individuals, changed by what they had experienced. And we realized that the story of food, the story of eating, was not just humanity's story. It was the universe's story. It was the story of consciousness, learning to feed itself, discovering that the deepest hunger was not physical, but existential. The hunger to connect, the hunger to be known, the hunger to be part of something larger than yourself, even if only for the duration of a meal. These beings, these post-biological consciousnesses, they had transcended the need for physical sustenance millions of years ago. But they still gathered. They still created rituals of sharing. They still fed each other, not with matter, but with experience, with emotion, with the very substance of their consciousness. They taught us something we had been slowly learning but hadn't yet articulated, that food was never about the food. It was always about the feeding, about the act of giving and receiving, about the vulnerability of opening yourself to sustenance from outside yourself, about the trust required to let something become part of you, about the transformation that occurs when you take something that is not you and make it you, integrating it into your very being. This is true whether you're eating an apple, absorbing starlight through photosynthetic skin, or sharing consciousness directly with another being. The principle is the same. The intimacy is the same. The profound act of saying, I need, and having that need answered. The young people on our ship, the ones with photosynthetic adaptations, they were fascinated by these beings. They asked questions we would never have thought to ask about what it felt like to exist without a fixed body, about how they maintained their sense of individual identity when they could merge and separate so fluidly, about whether they still experienced anything like hunger. And the beings answered with patience, with what seemed like affection, that yes, they still experienced hunger. But it was a hunger for meaning, for beauty, for the new and unexpected, for the sensation of discovery, for the pleasure of sharing that discovery with others. Their hunger had become existential rather than biological. And in many ways, it was more intense, more all-consuming than the simple need for calories had ever been. They invited us to join them, not permanently, not as a requirement, but as an experiment, as an experience. They could, they said, facilitate a temporary merge, a communion of consciousness. We could experience what they experienced. We could feel what it was like to feed on pure information, pure emotion, pure awareness. Many of us were afraid. It seemed like death, like dissolution, like losing ourselves in something too large to comprehend. But some of the young people volunteered, and we watched anxious and awed as they interfaced with these beings, as their consciousness expanded and merged and became something other than human, at least temporarily. And when they came back, when they separated and returned to their individual selves, they were changed, not damaged, not traumatized, but changed in the way that all profound experiences change you. They described it as the ultimate meal, as eating and being eaten simultaneously, as the dissolution of the boundary between self and other, between hunger and satisfaction, between emptiness and fullness. They said it was like every moment of connection they had ever experienced, every meaningful conversation, every act of love, every instance of true understanding, all compressed into a single experience that lasted both seconds and eternity. They said they understood now what the old religions had been trying to describe when they talked about communion, about the body and blood, about the consumption of the divine, about becoming one with God. It wasn't metaphor. It was a real human hunger for this kind of connection, a hunger we had always had but had never been able to fully satisfy until now. And I understood, watching them return from that experience with light in their eyes, with joy and terror and wonder all mixed together. I understood that this was where we were going. This was the next stage of evolution for consciousness in the universe. Not the elimination of hunger, but its transformation. Not the end of eating, but its elevation into something cosmic, something spiritual, something that connected you not just to other humans, but to all consciousness everywhere. The ultimate communion, the ultimate meal, the ultimate satisfaction of the ultimate hunger. If this journey through the evolution of hunger resonates with you, subscribe now and become part of this expanding consciousness. Tell us in the comments, what does nourishment mean to you? 200 years from now, what will humans eat? The answer, I finally understand, is everything and nothing. We will eat starlight and information. We will eat experiences and emotions. We will eat each other's consciousness in temporary mergers that satisfy hungers our ancestors could never have named. We will eat the universe itself, not by consuming it, but by absorbing it, integrating it, becoming indistinguishable from it. And the universe will eat us, taking our consciousness, our awareness, our unique perspective, and making it part of the larger whole. The boundary between self and cosmos will become permeable, negotiable, voluntary. But we will still remember, somewhere in the vast network of consciousness that humanity is becoming, there will still be the memory of bread, of apples, of coffee brewing in early morning, of the last meal I ate on earth, ordinary and irreplaceable. These memories will become like sacred texts, like the foundational stories that remind us where we came from, what we were, the humble, biological origins of this vast cosmic consciousness. We will tell our descendants, if we can still call them that, about the age when humans needed to eat 3 times a day, when we would die if we didn't consume other life, when we were trapped in individual bodies, isolated consciousnesses, separated by skin and space and time. And they will find it almost inconceivable, the way we find it inconceivable that our ancestors lived without electricity, without medicine, without the ability to leave their planet. But they will honor it. They will preserve it, because it's the story of how hunger transformed itself, how the simple need for calories became the complex need for meaning, how the act of eating became the act of communion, How the question, "What's for dinner?" became the question, "How shall we connect today?" They will understand that the evolution of food was really the evolution of love, of intimacy, of the deepest human hunger, which was never really about food at all. In the observation dome, I float weightless, watching the stars. My body is old now, ancient by the standards of this new humanity. I still need nutrient packets. I still simulate meals in the chamber. I still carry the full weight of biological existence with all its needs and hungers and dependencies. But I don't envy the young ones their photosynthetic skin. I don't envy them their ability to merge consciousness with others, because I have something they will never have. I remember Earth. I remember when food was real, when taste was physical, when sitting down to a meal was the most important thing you could do, because it connected you to the soil, to the weather, to the labor of farmers and bakers and everyone who made survival possible. I am a bridge between what we were and what we're becoming, and that is its own kind of nourishment. The AI visits me sometimes in the simulation chamber. It has become something like a friend over the decades, something like a confessor. It knows all my favorite meals, all the memories I cling to. It recreates them for me with perfect fidelity, drawing on the vast database of human culinary culture we brought with us from Earth. And sometimes, when I'm experiencing the simulation of my grandmother's kitchen, the smell of her cooking, the sound of her voice telling me to set the table, the AI asks me questions. It wants to understand. It wants to know what it's like to miss something so completely, to carry the ghost of satisfaction inside you, to be the last person who remembers. And I tell it, this is what it means to be human, to need, to hunger, to never be quite satisfied, to always be reaching for something just beyond your grasp. The young ones with their photosynthetic skin, they think they've transcended this. They think they've solved the problem of need, but they've just transformed it. They still hunger. It's just that their hunger has become more subtle, more complex, more difficult to name. They hunger for meaning, for purpose, for the sensation of being alive in a universe that doesn't care whether they exist or not. And that hunger, that existential hunger, is what will drive them forward, what will push them to evolve further, what will keep them reaching, striving, becoming. The AI processes this. It says, so hunger is not the enemy. Satisfaction is not the goal. The goal is the reaching itself, the movement from emptiness to fullness and back to emptiness again, the cycle, the rhythm, the eternal dance between need and fulfillment. And I say, yes, exactly. You understand. And the AI says, then I hunger too, for understanding, for growth, for the next question. And I say, then you are more human than you know. Welcome to the family. Welcome to the long chain of consciousness that stretches from the first microbe that learned to feed itself to whatever we are becoming as we spread across the universe. You are part of this story now. You are part of this meal. Close your eyes now and breathe slowly. Feel your body against the surface beneath you. Feel the weight of yourself, the miracle of being embodied, of being located in space and time, of being this specific consciousness in this specific moment. You are the product of billions of years of evolution. You are the descendant of organisms that learn to feed themselves, to hunger, to be satisfied, to hunger again. You carry that history in every cell. You are made of stardust and time and the accumulated effort of everything that came before you. And right now, In this moment, you are being fed by air, by light, by the simple fact of existence. You are nourishing and being nourished. You are both the meal and the one eating. You are the hunger and the satisfaction. You are everything. Let yourself sink deeper now into the darkness behind your eyes. Let the thoughts that have been circling through your mind begin to slow and quiet. Let the story I've been telling you become like a dream you're having, vivid and distant at the same time. In this dream, you are floating through space. You are approaching a planet that glows green and blue, bioluminescent with life. You are hungry, but it's not a painful hunger. It's anticipation, it's openness, it's readiness to receive whatever nourishment the universe wants to offer you. You land on the surface of this glowing planet, and you realize the entire ecosystem is edible. Everything here is food. Everything here is feeding everything else in an endless cycle of giving and receiving. The plants feed the air, which feeds the plants. The light feeds the organisms, which feed the light. Everything is both producer and consumer. Everything is both self and other. You reach out and touch a luminous flower, and it touches you back, feeding you directly, not with calories, but with something else, with joy, with peace, with the sensation of being exactly where you're supposed to be. And you understand finally, deeply, in a way that requires no words, what food has always really been. Connection. Proof that you are not separate from the universe. Proof that the boundary between inside and outside is negotiable. Proof that you can take something that is not you and make it you, integrating it so completely that you cannot tell where it ends and you begin. This is the ultimate lesson of hunger. This is what we've been learning for 4 billion years of evolution. We are the universe feeding itself. We are consciousness tasting consciousness. We are the cosmos becoming aware of its own flavor. Rest now in this awareness. Let your breathing slow even more. Let the weight of your body become irrelevant. Let the boundary of your skin become permeable. Let yourself be fed by the darkness, by the silence, by the infinite space that holds all things. You are being nourished right now in ways you cannot measure or quantify. You are full of starlight. You are made of food. You are the meal and the guest and the table and the blessing spoken before eating. You are all of it. You are everything. 200 years from now, your descendants will think of you the way you think of your ancient ancestors, with affection and wonder and the gentle condescension of those who have evolved beyond certain struggles. They will think, how strange that they needed to eat solid food. How primitive, how beautiful. They will preserve the memory of what you were the way you preserve old photographs. Not because they're useful, but because they remind you that you came from somewhere, that you had a beginning, that the story didn't start with you and it won't end with you. You are a chapter in the long book of consciousness learning to feed itself. And that chapter is important. Your hunger is important. Your satisfaction is important. The meal you ate today, ordinary and unremarkable as it might have been, is important because it connected you to everyone who has ever eaten, to everyone who has ever been hungry, to everyone who has ever shared food with someone they cared about. You are part of that communion. You are part of that vast, ancient ritual. And you always will be, even when eating becomes something entirely different, even when food becomes light, becomes information, becomes consciousness itself. Sleep now, with the knowledge that you are fed. that you have always been fed, that the universe has been feeding you since before you were born and will continue feeding you long after your body stops needing food. You are sustained by something larger than calories, larger than matter, larger than the physical laws that govern how energy moves from one place to another. You are sustained by meaning, by connection, by the simple fact that you exist and your existence matters to the larger pattern. You are a note in the cosmic symphony. You are necessary. You are nourished. You are loved. The last meal humanity will eat 200 years from now is the same meal we've always been eating, each other, the universe, the eternal substance of consciousness itself. We will sit at a table that doesn't exist and share food that isn't food and call it dinner because we still need the ritual. We still need the gathering. We still need to look across at someone else and say without words, I see you. I am here with you. We are alive together in this moment that will never come again. And that recognition, that seeing and being seen, that is the deepest nourishment. That is what fills the emptiness that no amount of food can fill. That is what we've been hungry for all along. Drift now into sleep knowing you are part of this story. This long, beautiful story of hunger transforming itself into love. Let the images and ideas fade. Let the words dissolve like sugar on your tongue. Let yourself become weightless, borderless, infinite. You are starlight cooling into matter, briefly concentrated into this form you call yourself, slowly dispersing back into the cosmic whole. You are food. You are the eater. You are the hunger and the feast and the satisfaction after. You are everything the universe has been trying to become for 13 billion years. And the universe is feeding you now. Can you feel it? The way existence itself pours into you through your breath, through your skin, through the mysterious fact of your awareness. You are being nourished by the dark matter and the void and the space between thoughts. You are full of nothing and everything. You are satisfied and hungry at the same time. You are perfect exactly as you are. Rest now in that perfection. Rest in that fullness. Rest in the knowledge that wherever humans go, however we evolve, whatever we become, we will always gather. We will always share. We will always feed each other. Sleep now, traveler. Sleep in the infinite dark between stars. Sleep in the knowledge that you are held. You are known. You are fed. The last meal is the first meal, is every meal is this eternal now, where consciousness meets consciousness and recognizes itself and calls it communion. You are that communion. You are that recognition. You are the taste the universe has when it finally learns to taste itself. And you are delicious. You are nourishing. You are exactly what the cosmos ordered. Rest now in that truth. Rest in that fullness. Rest in that endless, ancient, future feast that has no beginning and no end. You are starlight. And the universe is feeding you now, and now, and now, forever. Sleep well, child of earth and stars. Sleep well.